Okay, YouTube, welcome back. It's Pep here with The Sentinel. Today we are going to go through 6 of my favourite tobacco fragrances that I have in my collection and run them through their paces, albeit not entirely thoroughly, but I guess I just wanted to go through my tobacco fragrances because tobacco is one of my favourite notes in fragrance, and I guess come up with a winner in this battle. So I'll explain how I came to pick these 6 fragrances, because there are a couple of fragrances in my collection that aren't part of this challenge or video. Fragrances like Tobacco Vanille and Zara's Rich Warm Tobacco. The criteria I set for the fragrances that I am going to be talking about today that tobacco, according to the Fragrantica database, and we can I guess not take it entirely seriously, but according to Fragrantica, these fragrances all had tobacco listed as their most dominant note, whereas something like Tobacco Vanille had vanilla listed as more dominant than tobacco. So it's all very subjective. They're all fragrances I have, so I may be missing out on some very other well-known tobacco fragrances, but for me this has been a pretty interesting exercise, and there might be some surprises, and I'd be really interested to hear at the end of the video your comments and your opinions on the fragrances I've chosen. So stick with me and we'll get to it. Okay, so the things I chose to test these fragrances on, I have picked 4 reasonably loose criteria, and they are that the fragrances are going to be judged on the opening, the dry down, it's the performance of the fragrance, so how long it lasts on my skin, and finally I've decided to also judge them based on their value for money, because I do have some very cheap fragrances here and some that are quite expensive. So I've got a combination of bottles that I own and some decants of the more expensive stuff. So I'll introduce the fragrances we're going to be testing. So the first one is one of the cheapies that I've mentioned, and this is a recent acquisition I've worn a few times. I do want to stress as well, I have not had extensive testing of these fragrances, but I have worn them enough to form an opinion. Some I really like. In fact, I like all of them, but there are aspects about some of them that make me prefer some over the others. So it's a combination of my judgment on these fragrances, but I did get my wife and a couple of other people to smell the dry down and the opening as well, and give their rankings, and so I took their opinions into account for the final ratings I give these fragrances. So I have on test Rémy Latour's Cigar, Havana by Aramis, Versace Man by Versace, my decant of Serge Lutens Chergui, and I have a decant of Parfum de Marly's Herod, as well as Mugler's Pure Havane. So what I thought I'd do is go through each of the criteria and give you my picks for the best in that section and the worst out of those 6 fragrances, and then in the end I'll give you a final rating and countdown from worst rating to the best rating. Okay, so let's talk about the opening notes on each of these fragrances. For me, the least impressive opening was Rémy Latour's Cigar, and the main reason is that as an eau de toilette, it is very weak, and I need a lot more sprays of this to have it projecting so I can smell it when I'm wearing it, and as you can probably guess, longevity is not going to be a great score for cigar as well. So it is the cheapest bottle in this collection, cheapest fragrance per milliliter. So I'm not entirely surprised. It's not that the opening is unpleasant, it's just there's not enough there to really catch my attention. For me, my favourite opening of these 6 fragrances is actually Thierry Mugler's Pure Havane. Now, I didn't mention this before, but obviously there's a few fragrances in this 6 that are on the sweet side, and a couple of tobacco fragrances here that are considered more spicier, on the spicier side. And Chogy for me, it is a sweet tobacco, but it goes off into a different direction. So Pure Havane for me was the most pleasing opening. Not far behind that was probably Herod and Versace Man. So let's move on to the next criteria. So the next criteria was the dry down and what it smelled like on the skin after a few hours on. In this test, apart from my own ratings, I got the opinions again of a couple of other people, and we collated those ratings and put them in some kind of order. Now, for this part of the test, Pure Havane came out on top again. It was deemed to have the nicest dry down of the lot, or the most pleasing according to our noses. Herod was a very close second. Now, it's no surprise that cigar rated the lowest here, because it was almost undetectable after a couple of hours. So that was in the dry down, and the other fragrances were pretty close. I mean, there was a couple of comments about Herod being very sweet, and for somebody it reminded them of a candy, some type of candy smell. And I get that, but to me, Pure Havane's in the same ballpark. Just a comment on the dry down with Chogy. Definitely, people picked up on the hay note that's in there, which gives Chogy a kind of I guess, for want of a better description, a more dirty kind of dry down in a very pleasant way. Of course, Chogy's a wonderful scent. So Pure Havane gets top rating for dry down as well. So for the test on performance and longevity on the skin, there obviously was a clear poor performer, and that's Cigar again. As I said earlier, after a couple of hours it was almost undetectable on a strip and skin as well, and naturally that meant the performance is pretty poor. The best performer by a mile, and I am talking about beast mode performance, goes to Patem de Marly's Herod. And I was expecting this too, because the times that I've worn it, it just goes strong for well over 10 hours easily, and it's just almost got no weakening, so it almost feels as strong at the end as it does in the opening, and not in a overbearing way, but you need to really be careful with the amount of sprays you use of Herod. So Herod clear winner in the performance stakes. Now the last criteria I wanted to judge these fragrances on was basically value for money. Now we need to be aware that Herod, Chogy, Eau de Parfum concentration, and the other 4 fragrances are Eau de Toilette. In terms of value for money, for me, the best value for money, because it also, wasn't a bad performer in the other categories, is this guy, Aramis Havana. I've got this 100ml bottle for $30, and it's a great smell. So again, it's not a sweet style tobacco. It's a very spicy tobacco with barbershop fragrance DNA in it. But if you know Aramis, you can have an idea of what this would smell like. So final ratings. Well, I'm probably going to disappoint some people. For me, there was no clear winner. There was definitely a clear loser, and that is a Remy Latour cigar. So if I'm being completely honest and people want me to recommend a tobacco scent to them, I will wear this. I've got the bottle. I won't give it away. I'll use it up. I won't buy another bottle. I won't replace it. But if I'm going to recommend a tobacco fragrance, I'm more than likely always going to go for, if you want something that's not on the sweet side, go for Aramis Havana. Now, as for the other 5 fragrances, including Havana, in the end they all scored very similarly. So where does that leave us in terms of tobacco fragrances? If you're looking for something sweet, probably Parfum de Marly edges out Pure Havana, but based on performance, in terms of the quality of the fragrance to my nose, I like them equally. But Parfum de Marly is going to last you all day, but it is, you know, twice the cost of Pure Havana, probably more, for the same amount of milliliters. So you have to weigh that up. Definitely try and sample them, but I like them equally. Chegui, on the other hand, for me, is on the sweet side as well, but to me it's a very unique tobacco. It has its own thing going on. You know, Serge Lutens, these only come in the 50ml bottles, so they're not cheap either. But on the niche side, they're also not. I don't think that they're very expensive, and it's got pretty good performance as well. There's definitely elements to this fragrance that set it apart from the other ones. There's the sweetness, there's the hay note, and so there's lots of different character. It's got a lot of character, Chegui, to me. A lot of people find it to be a wonderful, comforting scent, and some people find it quite disgusting, but you know, I love it. So that's an option. But if you want something, personally speaking, the standout for me out of these, and just because I find it so different, and up until recently had no idea it existed, and I think it's still pretty readily available, as long as you like the note of saffron as an accompaniment to tobacco, Versace Man. I have just fallen in love with this. It's Eau de Toilette. It's got, you know, above average performance. It's a very unique smell compared to the others. You know, you can find things like Pure Havana and Herod, and you can find things that are similar to Aramis Havana, but I haven't smelled anything like this before. There might be something out there, but seriously, it's a wonderful smell, and it's a wonderful smell, and I encourage anyone, if you get a chance to try it out, try it out. As long as you don't mind the saffron that you know sits there with the tobacco. Okay guys, so let me know what you think of your favorite tobaccos. If you think I should try anything new from the tobacco family. And in the future I'll have to do more in-depth reviews of these ones, and until then, I'll see you later. Thanks for sticking with me. Bye.